Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas testifying last week that he did not know where 42 migrants on the terror watch list were. Watch this.
Have any of the 42 illegal migrants on the terrorist watch list or no-fly list encountered on our southwest border been released into the United States?
I do not know the answer to your question.
You do not know whether they have been released or not into the country. That's your testimony.
Now Mayorkas admits he does know where these 42 migrants are. He just didn't want to, quote, misspeak during the hearing. Well, because he didn't know then, but then he looked it up, made some calls, found out, and now he knows, but he won't say anything more than that. Joining me now, former U.S. Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Matt, good to see you.
Good morning, Dagan.
Just
good to see you.
Mind-boggling.
It's very frustrating, and he not only did he have this testimony where he made several extraordinary statements, but then yesterday he was on the Sunday shows and at least twice suggested that the DHS and the Border Patrol have operational control of our southern border, and we know based on just what we see with our own eyes that's not true.
Right, effectively managing the border is what he said last week. Does he not understand the grave problems that the open border are causing, or the loss of life? Operation Lone Star seized more than 300 million lethal doses of fentanyl at the southern border. Texas Governor Abbott and the state's Department of Public Safety worked together to secure this border. And let's just add in all of the doses that do not get seized that wind up killing tens of thousands of Americans.
Yeah, the amount of fentanyl that's pouring in through our country is astounding and is lethal. And, when he says yesterday on Fox News Sunday with Bret Baier that they have operational control of the southern border, he did not mention that most of that is being done by the state of Texas at the expense of the Texas state taxpayers. And I just, he just doesn't seem serious about this and about the process and the magnet that his lack of enforcement by DHS at the southern border is causing for illegal immigrants to come across. Dagan, this is the most frustrating thing for me is leadership matters. And if you look at the things we accomplished in the Trump administration, both at DHS and at the Department of Justice, which runs the immigration courts, we had that system running effectively. We made sure that anyone that had a lawful asylum claim could make that claim, but that most people were turned away and sent back to their home countries. It is the exact opposite now. Most people are allowed to stay in some manner or means. And now on top of all that, they want to get rid of the Title 42 authorities to immediately deport people. It's just, it's extraordinary, and it's really a shame.
I'll just quote Stephen Miller, the former senior advisor to President Trump, who tweeted this after the appearances from Alejandro Mayorkas. He said, "Watched inveterate liar Mayorkas on Sunday shows. He repeated one of his most appalling and galling lies, that the illegal families, unaccompanied children, and single adults he's releasing en masse face future removal. They don't. Once released, they're on an honor system, and they stay here." ICE removals are all at an all-time record low, now under 2,000 removals monthly, far less than the number freed daily. But those few who are being removed are almost all from the detained population, not those free and at large. Stephen goes on. But again, they think they can get away with lying to the American people.
They do, and he's done it repeatedly, not only in front of Congress, but then on the Sunday shows. And, we're not going to get control of this. And you talk about the misinformation board. I saw earlier this morning you were talking to Congressman Perry about that. But this board, what they, the first thing they should do is tell people the truth, which is that the asylum system in the United States is broken, that it takes forever to get people through, that green cards are given out 6 months into the process. And to your point is, if you come in as a family unit or as unaccompanied minor, there's very little chance that you're ultimately going to be removed from the country. because of ICE operation. I want to say one thing, though.
Yes.
The men and women of ICE and the men and women of border protection, they are such hard working, and they want to do their jobs, and they have been completely hamstrung by this administration and this secretary. And, you know, throwing this problem back on Congress when we had it effectively solved in the Trump administration is a cowardly act by this administration, and the American people should hold them to account. They're fighting in court at the Supreme Court level to end the Remain in Mexico policy. So at every turn, the only thing that this administration cares about are the optics. They just don't want the American people to see what they're doing, like the migrant flights in the middle of the night. That's what they care about the most, not the families of people who have died from fentanyl poisonings or the men and women at the border putting their lives on the line. In the case of Bishop Evans losing that life. But to quote Jen Psaki, he didn't work for the federal government. He worked for the state. It's just right. And the state of Texas is bearing a lot of this responsibility, Dagan. It's a shame that that the people at the border are having to fish people out of the Rio Grande River to save their lives, and then you never see them returned to their home countries. They're allowed right back into our country. Matt Whitaker, former Attorney General. Good to see you, sir. Thanks, so much for being here.